Gwen is going to propose.
So, good evening, everybody. I'm Gwen Robinson, past president of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand and editor-at-large of Nikkei Asia. As you know, we're here today to mark World Press Freedom Day, and for the first time, I think, with Reporters Without Borders, RSF is going to launch their annual World Press Freedom Index here in Thailand. And then we'll hear from some practitioners themselves from the region to talk about some of the big trends in the last year, as you know. So I'm very sorry we had to start late. We still have people coming from the airport, but we've got our first critical set of speakers, which is the RSF Reporters Sans Frontières team. So just to briefly introduce them, to my immediate right is Cedric Alviani, Asia Pacific Bureau Director of RSF. And next to him is Alexandra Belakovska, who's the RSF Asia Pacific Advocacy Manager. And on my far right is Arthur Rochereau, RSF Asia Pacific Advocacy Assistant. So I'd like to turn to Cedric to kick the whole thing off and tell us a bit about your findings for the 2024 World Press Freedom Index report, which is compiled annually by RSF.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Well, hi everyone. I'm Cedric Alviani, the Asia Pacific Bureau Director of Reporters Without Borders. I'm really thrilled to be here today for the Press Freedom Day to release the World Press Freedom Index, which is one of the most, if not the most, significant advocacy tool Reporters Without Borders has developed over the years. First, I will make a brief introduction of Reporters Without Borders, especially for those who were not here last month, because we had actually a talk last month during which we introduced our NGO more in detail. And then I will let my colleagues from our advocacy team reveal the findings of this year's World Press Freedom Index release. So first, I will briefly introduce Reporters Without Borders. We're an international NGO based in Paris, founded in 1985, and whose mandate is the right to information and freedom of the press. We have approximately 100 staff members worldwide, half of them in Paris and the other half in bureaus. In the past decade, we opened a network of bureaus over the world, one in Washington, D.C., one in Rio de Janeiro, one in London, Rio, Dakar, and in 2017, a bureau in Taipei that was first covering the East Asia region, and which since last year now covers also the Southeast Asia and the Pacific region. We have also an observatory position in international organizations like UN, UNESCO, and Council of Europe. Yeah, I will very briefly describe some of our programs in support of journalism. Besides the World Press Freedom Index, which we will introduce in depth, we produce information. You can see some reports about Chinese propaganda, but of course we produce reports about many different domains that relate to journalism, including, of course, including China. Okay. We also advocate and fight for the release of detained journalists and press freedom defenders. The definition of journalists also includes most media workers, everyone who's involved in the process of production of information, or who may be detained or punished for producing news or supporting freedom of the press. I'm glad to say that we contributed to the liberation of Olivier Dubois, who was a hostage in Mali, and Mortaza Berboudi, who was detained by the Taliban in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, we're still struggling for many other cases. There are more than 500 detained journalists currently in the world. We are also advocating for figures like Chimilai, who has been defending for decades freedom of the press in Hong Kong, and Julian Assange, who is still being detained for being a source of information for media outlets. We also have developed capacity building and emergency assistance capacities. When in Ukraine, when the war started, when Russia attacked Ukraine, it took only 2 months for RSF to open a crisis center in Ukraine, and lately providing equipment, protective equipment, and services for journalists covering the conflict. Lately, we opened another center in Beirut, Lebanon, to support journalists covering the war in Gaza. And we just come back from Chiang Mai and Mesot, and we are considering to provide similar services for exiled Myanmar journalists in the future, but this is not decided, confirmed yet. We also had a program of training for women journalists in Afghanistan, but unfortunately we had to stop this program when Taliban came back into power. We operate this website, safety.rsf.org. You're welcome to give us a feedback on it. It's dedicated to reporters' safety, and it is original content made with safety specialists, physical, digital safety, mental health issues, anything that relates to the welfare of reporters on the field. Yeah. Besides traditional NGO solutions, which are necessary, but which of course are some kind of a band-aid to problems, Reporters Without Borders is also trying to be part of the solution. We are trying to contribute with other stakeholders to bring solutions to disinformation and to better support journalists. When it goes to the conflict in Ukraine, we managed to launch a satellite service that is allowing occupied regions of Ukraine and also part of Russia to receive uncensored Russian language programs, 25 independent radio and television channels. We also were the first NGO to launch a charter for journalism and artificial intelligence. Nowadays, every journalist is confronted to the need of at least considering to use these tools, but how to use these tools while remaining ethical, that's a big question which we tried to answer with this charter. I will only mention 2 more initiatives, the Information and Democracy Initiative Against Disinformation, which is now endorsed by 52 countries, and which includes a forum and policy working groups that are advising democracies on how to protect themselves against disinformation while keeping their democratic ADN and not just trying to censor contents. And last, you probably heard about it, the Journalism Trust Initiative, which is the first ISO certification for media outlets. We currently have 1,500 media outlets involved in the project. We hope that in the future we have many more, and that this will allow platforms, advertisers, governments, and of course the public to make the difference between media outlets that have made the effort of being transparent on their processes and that respect the basics of journalism ethics, and other internet contents that potentially may be dangerous for readers. What we hope from this is that in the future, when you make a research, a query on any search engine, there would be a bonus in the algorithm that would bring up JTI contents, so that this whitelist would allow to push these information contents down, and there would be less of a problem. So thanks for listening. Now I'm going to let my colleagues introduce the findings of the 2024 World Press Freedom Index compiled by Reporters Without Borders.
Thank you so much, Cedric. And the purpose of the World Press Freedom Index actually is to compare the level of freedom enjoyed by journalists in 180 countries and territories, and is the main tool of RSF in showcasing this press freedom around the world throughout the year. And this tool has been used internationally and is recognized by not only media outlets and press agencies, but also UN, EU, and World Bank. And the index is a snapshot of the situation during the calendar year. I want to explain this because some people were asking why we don't include the incident that happened in 2024. The index is only takes in consideration the events that happened between January and December. And prior to its publication, it's done in a collaborative effort of RSF headquarters, 13 bureaus and sections, correspondents in 150 countries around the world, which work together to enhance and to gather a panel of best experts of journalism in each country that we cover. And the score is actually calculated on the basis of two components. One component is a tally of abuses against journalists in connection with their work and against media outlets. And this is updated by RSF staff on a daily basis in each country that we cover. And another point is the qualitative analysis of the situation of each country, which is based on the survey made by the respondents such as journalists, researchers, academics, human rights defenders. And this questionnaire is actually available so far in 23 languages. We hope that we can translate it also to other regional languages in Asia-Pacific region in the near future. Since 2 years ago, we have changed the methodology significantly, and the press freedom questionnaire was divided into 5 distinct categories, which came from our definition of press freedom and journalism. Maybe I'll not be reading the definition itself because you can see it on the screen, but right now we take into consideration 2 different categories and contexts. One is political context, another was the legal framework. Third one is economic context. Fourth one is social cultural context. And the last one that we, as mentioned, and is the first part of the components, is the safety of journalists that we are observing and documenting on the daily basis by our RSF staff around the world. But maybe let me jump to the this year observation of the RSF Press Freedom Index. As more than half of the population this year around the world is already went to the poll stations to take part in the elections. And RSF Index reveals a very concerning trend, that the press freedom around the world is actually being threatened by the very people who should be the guarantors of the safety, which are political authorities. And this can be very obvious from what we saw in the index, because the findings that we have seen is that from the 5 indicators that I showed to you just before, the one that is falling the most is the political indicator, which fall almost 8 points, which is really a huge decline comparing to other years. And this is because the political authorities are not fulfilling anymore their role as the guarantors for the public's right to reliable, independent, and diverse information. And we saw it not only in the authoritarian regimes, what is also very worrying in the democratic countries, even in Asia-Pacific region. As an example, for example, I could give you the South Korea in the past year. And as you can see in this chart, the Middle East, maybe not so clearly, I hope it's not too small for you, Middle East region is the one of the worst situation for RSF Press Freedom Index around the world. It's closely followed by the countries from Asia-Pacific region, where journalists is suffering under the weight of authoritarian governments, and almost all of them are on the end of the RSF Press Freedom Index. In Africa also the situation is not better, because most of the countries are in very serious situation, which is the deep orange color. And the only countries where the press freedom situation is good is actually in Europe, and more specifically within the European Union. And it's also related to the fact that these countries are following, for example, the European Media Freedom Act that has been passed just a year ago. And then also you can see here the map, and we, as RSF, with huge sadness, I think, can say that the colors in the map are changing in the year, and they're more and more red year by the year. And not only in the regions such as Asia Pacific, but also in Africa and some European countries. Yes, and just to maybe say very quickly that only in 45 countries you could see the satisfactory situation for the Press Freedom Index, and this is for mostly in European countries, some in Asia Pacific, such as Taiwan, for example. Next actually. And the other thing which is very concerning is that only 1% of population around the world has access to good situation and basically a good situation of press freedom, as the rest is in the serious or very serious situation. And this overall decline, and I will say again about the political score, because I think this is something that as a female we could see, is even seen in the top 3 of the RSF Press Freedom Index, where Norway, which still remains in the first place, has fallen its political score by, I think, 7 or 8 points, which is really significant, where Ireland, which was second last year, has fallen to the even further away score and was ceded to leading position of other 2 countries, which is Denmark and Sweden, which took over due to the political score of the Ireland. And the 2 countries that were in the bottom of the index, and this is a question that I've been asked many times during the past 2 days, Vietnam and China, have ceded the positions to the 3 countries where political score, again political score, have plummeted. So we have Afghanistan here, due to the consistent prosecution of journalists by the Taliban since they returned to power. We have Syria here and Eritrea. And the 2 countries which are at the bottom of the index have become the lawless zones for the media, with a record number of journalists detained, missing, or held hostage. And there's also another trend that we have noticed in the past year, and is because of the absence of the policies, regulations, very often in the democracies, not only, but very often, to use the generative AI, there are some of disinformation for political purposes, also have become a very huge concern. For example, you can show the other one. The deepfakes now occupy a leading position in influencing the course of elections. And this was evidenced, for example, by a deepfake of journalist Monika Todova during the parliamentary elections in Slovakia. And this was the first case of a documented case of attack on journalists with usage of deepfake that was created to influence the election in the country. Yes. And to maybe end on the global perspective, this year is notable also for the clear lack of political will on the part of the international community, especially to protect the journalists for the UN Security Council Resolution 2222, so 2222. And for you who don't know, this resolution requires the state to protect journalists, not only as members of a civilian population, but also because they particular social function. So they need to be protected in the field as a journalist. And we could see this with more than 100 Palestinian journalists being killed by the Israel forces, including at least 22 in the course of the work. Yeah. And now I will give the voice to my colleague who will speak a bit about the Asia-Pacific situation. Thank you.
So after this global overview of the situation, I will focus on the situation in the Asia-Pacific region. And as my colleague Alexandra said, what we observe in the global trend, we also observe in the Asia-Pacific. Actually, the global situation has worsened in the Asia-Pacific. We cover 32 countries and territories, and among them, only 6 had their global score improved, comparing to the previous index. This is mainly due to more and more political pressure, but also more and more violences, physical and online harassment, for instance. And this is, in 2023, it was especially true in the context of electoral campaigns. As you can see on this map focusing on the Asia Pacific, there is no green country, meaning there is no good situation for journalism in the Asia Pacific region. And even more concerning, 12 of these 32 countries are in dark red, meaning in a very serious situation. So meaning almost, more than a third of the country in Asia Pacific are in a very serious situation. And among the more important changes comparing to last year, the biggest increase is in the Fiji, that increased by 45 ranks, and the bigger deterioration is in Malaysia, who lost 34 ranks. Among the 10 worst countries in the index this year, 5 are from the Asia Pacific region. Afghanistan, with 3 journalists killed this year and 25 detained, is now the worst in the region. North Korea, which last year was the worst, remained information black hole where journalism does not exist. And Myanmar, China, Vietnam remain the world's biggest jail for journalists. These 3 countries only gather 1/3 of all the journalists detained in the world. I will let my colleague explain the situation in Hong Kong.
Yeah, just very quickly, because actually Hong Kong this year have risen in the index 5 places, but what we want to emphasize is the fact that actually if you look into the score of Hong Kong, it falls by 2 points, which is really significant. And the reason for that is that the Hong Kong authorities and Chinese regime are still leading the unprecedented campaign against media outlets. And to date, we saw at least 6 media that ceased due to the atmosphere of fear in Hong Kong. The latest one was just a month ago, Radio Free Asia, that decided to close the bureau, citing the threats and the security of staff. 2 other huge mainstream media were forced shut down by the authorities. We see still the trials which are not being ended until it's been 3 years already, and they're still being delayed. And so people who are facing, at least 10 journalists and press freedom defenders facing life in prison for national security charges. So just to say the situation is very serious, and we don't see the hope for improvement with the new regulations as such national security law and Article 23.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, 2023 was a pre-election context, and we observed actually a high level of violences against journalists in this electoral context, especially, for instance, in Bangladesh, where 3 journalists have been killed last year. We also observed many enforced disappearance cases in Pakistan, and a number of physical attacks against journalists in Indonesia as well. In Philippines also, despite there was no huge major election, 2 journalists have been killed. Philippines remain one of the most dangerous countries in the Asia Pacific. And all of these crimes remain with almost total impunity, which is worrying. Even in democracies, we observed last year return of censorship practices, especially in countries where we observed in the recent years an improvement. For instance, in South Korea, which decreased by 15 ranks. There was a trend last year of government-directed defamation cases. The defamation is being a trend in the targeting of voices critical to the government. That was also true in Mongolia, also in Malaysia. And actually, this year is the first time since 2006 there is no Asia Pacific country in the top 15 of the RSF Press Freedom Index. However, despite challenges, New Zealand, but also Timor-Leste, Samoa, and Taiwan remain press freedom models in the region. And I will now open the floor for a Q&A session.
Thanks very much, team. And if anyone would like to follow up on any of those very interesting trends we saw now, just I think we have a microphone, Kuntam, do we? Yeah, so there's going to be a microphone up there.
Maybe this one?
Yeah, this one.
This one,
Yeah. So if there's any questions, actually I would like to just ask a little bit, since we are in Thailand, without getting too deep in the weeds on that one, and obvious sensibilities here in Thailand about certain forms of censorship, or rather self-censorship, but how you see and how Thailand trended this year.
I will just show the map. So just to say, actually, Thailand improved this year and is now in a light orange in a problematic situation, and is now ranked 87th.
Yeah.
How does that compare?
which is plus 19 places.
Plus 19 places.
Plus 19 places.
And this change is a positive change, and we hope it will bring the government to enforce reforms to keep going. And actually this change is mainly due to an improvement in safety context for journalists in Thailand. Despite the change in the administration, we haven't seen a huge change in the political context.
And just maybe to add, because we have these 5 indicators, for Thailand, for security is plus 35 ranks for the security measures. So it's a huge change comparing to the last years. And for example, for the political factor, that as I mentioned before, fallen in many countries around the world, is just plus 2 places. So it didn't match such a huge impact, at least in our survey, for Thailand situation of press freedom.
Thank you. I can see someone coming towards the microphone. Just identify yourself and ask you.
Don Greenlees from AsiaLink at the University of Melbourne. Just a quick question for you, Cedric, and we've discussed this previously, but can you give me an update on where you stand with the Journalism Trust Initiative in the Indo-Pacific, particularly in Southeast Asia? Are you getting much take-up from from media organisations in the region?
So I'll be very brief because it's a little bit out of the scope of the index. But we in the Asia Pacific we started in December, quite late, because actually in the past years our work has been hindered by the restrictions, the COVID-19 restrictions that lasted much longer than on other continents. We currently must have reached approximately 100, I say that under my colleagues' control, maybe 80 to 100 media outlets joining the initiative, but none of them yet has obtained the certification, which is a process that will take a couple more months.
Okay, yeah. I note you said that was a bit out of the scope, but aren't bottom-up pressures, as in, a significant factor as well as top-down pressures when it comes to considering press freedom?
Sorry, I cannot hear.
Aren't bottom-up
Maybe
pressures,
you could speak up a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, I thought the microphone was clear, but aren't bottom-up pressures a significant factor in determining press freedom? Obviously not as much as top-down, but the JTI is a mechanism to improve bottom-up momentum for press freedom.
Yeah, no, of course, and we hope that JTI would mechanically contribute to a general improvement of press freedom in the world due to the better circulation of journalistic information and disinformation contents being pushed down, of course. Thank you for this question. Maybe before someone asks another question, I could mention a little more about how we make this index and how it works. It may be sometimes surprising to see that there's big movements, some countries going up, some countries going down. It's that these movements are not always correlated to improvements that can be actually seen in these countries. But an index has to have a number 1 and a number 180 in our case, because we're evaluating 180 countries and territories. So there are some mechanical movements. When a large number of countries are going down, and unfortunately the notes are going down, somehow some countries go up just by not getting worse. In the case of Thailand, it is not the In the case of Thailand, it's not the case. There is a real improvement relating to the safety of journalists. We could see that there has not been significant violence during the past year, while in the previous elections there was much more. But in the case of other countries, it can be a purely mechanical move. It's the case of Taiwan, for example, that has gained how many?
It's 27 right now. So
Yeah, that is
plus 8.
yeah, +8. But there has been no changes in Taiwan. It's just the other countries are worse, so Taiwan is getting better. Maybe to answer another question, how this index is done, there is a questionnaire survey that we send every year to the largest possible number of respondents, but of course these respondents have to share the basic values regarding the importance of press freedom. And we actually are always looking for new respondents. So if some of you do not receive this questionnaire and are interested, you would be more than welcome. If you know Thai journalists or specialists who could also be good respondents, do not hesitate to refer them to us so that we can get in touch. So we send this questionnaire. It's anonymous. It's quite long. In total, there are 80 questions that try to cover these 5 criteria Alexandra was describing earlier. And after receiving the questionnaires, we can give 5 notes to each country. And the 5 notes merge together, plus another indicator, which is violence against the press. Yes, the journalist safety allows us to make to give a global note for each country. So that's how we make the index. And there's a tendency for countries in the bottom to change. It's very difficult, especially for the worst countries on earth relating to human rights or press freedom. It's very difficult actually to make a ranking. You can imagine why, because we're reaching a level where the situation is so horrible that it's very hard to even compare. So of course, we have to we have to do this ranking even for these countries, but that explains why there is this movement. Some of you might wonder, why is Myanmar better than China? While actually situation on the field may be harder for journalists in Myanmar. Well, just back from Mae Sot and Chiang Mai, and yes, there are still journalists reporting in Myanmar. It's really difficult for them, but they are still crossing the border. It's still possible for them to operate with huge difficulties. China, on the other hand, has built a state system of control of journalism and the media that is so well rigged that now it's even impossible for most reporters to publish any information that is not vetted by the regime. And plus, the Chinese regime is very actively trying to spread its system and to make it become the leading system in the world. So we, of course, consider that this poses a bigger threat to journalism, hence the ranking of China below Myanmar. It's just an example, of course. Yeah, maybe some of you have questions now?
I think that's fine if you don't mind, we might
Okay.
move. Okay, last one, please.
One
We
last
just want to
question.
move. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the microphone. Tommy Walker for VOA News. I'm on the board here at the FCCT. In the report, it says that the Asia Pacific is the second most difficult region to report in globally. do you guys have any comparison to when it's been like this in the past, in previous years? And second question, maybe Alexandra can answer this. Are the RSF having any issues obtaining this sort of information to create these indexes? Are you having any issues to, you know, in authoritarian countries that might not allow you to monitor certain situations?
Replying the first question, I think it was always like this, so Asia Pacific was always second. I can confirm this later, but this is my memory right now that I have in my mind. And the second question, of course, and we have countries like North Korea, for example, where it's impossible to have any type of researchers and people who would give us information about the state of press freedom. So what we do in this situation, we are assessing the press freedom situation in accordance to the surveys made by people, for example, in South Korea, people who have really good knowledge and are living abroad in other countries and are analyzing the situation on the annual basis. So the same would be for Turkmenistan, for example, from Eritrea and other countries, which are also the black holes for press freedom around the world.
I would say, yeah. Maybe just to conclude, I would add one difficulty we have is that we have to keep confidential the number of respondents and the identity of respondents for their own security. In many countries, they would receive major threats and would just or just get jailed, and we wouldn't be able to make this index. And this is, of course, the only thing that cannot be fully transparent in the index. And every year, authoritarian governments are going to say that the index is fabricated. This is, in my sense, the only limitation we have. And that's why it's important for us, at least, to have this protection, to have the largest possible number of respondents for us to feel comfortable saying, no, we have sufficient number of respondents. Anything else? Oh, no, it's
no, I think
thank you so much, Gwen, for giving us this opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming today.
Oh, maybe you could say people can easily access this index now, right, on your website?
Yeah, and actually, if you go, where's the laptop?
Sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, you can find on the Reporters Without Borders website, rsf.org, or you got the connection to the press kit.
Which is a QR code for business cards.
And the purpose of the index is to make governments react, to make the civil society react. And actually, when governments are very vocal, very disagree with the index, actually that's a good opportunity to engage on these issues. Well, thank you very much for today. We will give the space to our colleagues for the panel.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to call up our panel now. Perhaps if we're just going to change some of the seating around. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Into the microphone. Yes.
Okay. Hi again, everybody. Sorry about that. Just a quick changeover. So, as you know, this is the part of the evening where we're hearing from the practitioners, the experts, and I'd just like to briefly introduce our panel and also say that we're very pleased also that a very brave Cambodian journalist is going to join us online from North America, where she has gone after effectively being run out of Cambodia for her reporting. Pa So Keng will join us online a little bit later. And meanwhile, to introduce our excellent panel tonight, on my very far right is Hui Yi Tan, board member of the FCCT and bureau chief of the Straits Times for Indochina, I believe. Yes. And she'll just give a bit of an overview of what we're trying to do at the FCCT, including our outreach with Thai media as well. Next to her is Thomson Chow, founding president of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Taiwan. Founding president. And also to those who followed Myanmar, you probably know Thomson has extensive experience in Myanmar for a long time with the Myanmar Times as business editor and then with Frontier magazine. He's now working with Nikkei Asia in Taiwan as well as Frontier for a while longer. So he can actually address both issues, I think, reporting in Taiwan and Myanmar. And next to him is Kun Natakon Plodi, head of digital investigations for Southeast Asia for Agence France Presse, a keen monitor of the fake news and misinformation situation in Asia, and very across all the trends. And closest to me here is Sue Myat Wai, founding co-editor of Tan Nguyen Ket and also joint secretary of the Independent Press Council of Myanmar, IPCM, which is the new independent body that brings together all independent Myanmar media that are in exile, operating most of them in Thailand. So she'll address the issues facing Myanmar journalists and overall the press freedom issues in Myanmar, which, as you saw, is pretty well near the rock bottom of the press freedom index. No surprises there. So I'd like to first turn to Hui Yi to maybe give a quick overview of our work at FCCT, amongst other things. And before I do that, I would just like to commend AFP, which it seems today we heard had won the International Human Rights Award for photography. Kuntam, maybe we could show the photography that won AFP the award, and the entire awards list will be available, I think, on a website, and will be featured at an award ceremony to be held in Taipei, and involves Human Rights Watch, FCC Taiwan, Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand, and others. So these are the Myanmar photos that won as the Human Rights Photos of the Year, showing it's one photographer who can't be named for security reasons, but it's all one photographer's work. I think mainly in Karenni, is it, Stefan, or? Shan State, sorry. So these are all from Shan State. So I think you can see it on a website of Human Rights Watch Press Awards. Thanks very much. So with that, we'll turn to you, Hui Yi, to kick it off, if that's okay. And what we're really looking at, I suppose, the overall theme is, as highlighted in the World Press Freedom Index, but really let's focus on Asia in this panel. And is press freedom in Asia moving forwards, going backwards, or just kind of like on life support?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks, Gwen. We heard a lot of grim news tonight so far, and I hope to present a bit better news. And before we begin, I'd like to thank Cedric as well, because you mentioned about the nuances of compiling the Press Freedom Index, and sometimes countries go up and down rankings without even actually changing their position on press freedom very much. And as I was listening to the presentation just now, I was just reflecting on one of my experiences recently. I was one of the speakers invited to an Australian embassy training for Lao journalists in Vientiane recently. And as you saw on the ranking just now, Laos is pretty much quite low down on the index. But that workshop gave me the opportunity to speak to a lot of the journalists who are working for state media, as well as officials who are involved with working with the media. And that's when I realized that despite the tight constraints they work under, a lot of them do still try to push the boundaries in ways that I perhaps cannot mention now because this is live streamed. But I think it's important for us to identify these spaces and amplify these spaces and try to push the boundaries alongside with them by working with them where possible. And this is where FCCT tries to hold the line as well. So just to give a brief rundown of what we do here, we try to educate and we try to stimulate debate on important issues. We hold panel discussions once a week at least or more on topics where in certain places it's impossible now. For example, we had a couple of discussions on the repression in Hong Kong and Myanmar and Thailand and Thailand's Deep South. We try to keep the light shining on spaces where press freedom is increasingly constrained. Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, especially Myanmar. We have supported journalists in distress on the quiet, especially from Myanmar. We still maintain a support fund for Myanmar journalists. We have raised funds for journalists in exile, and we have also collected used equipment to try to redistribute to journalists who have had to flee from Myanmar and leave behind a lot of the important equipment. We organize regular briefings, sometimes off the record, on the situations in these countries. And we have advocated for journalists, especially in Thailand, to be able to wear their protective gear when they go out to organize protests. As you know, in Thailand, it is illegal to actually possess some of this protective gear. So this is a brief rundown of what we do. If you'd like to find out more, please catch up with us after this. We welcome your support. If you want to join us in our work or you want to fund our work, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Hui. So lots of issues there we can come back to, and we will have a Q&A at the end of this, so if you have questions for any of the panelists, please save them up. And let's next hear from Thompson about the general outlook in Taiwan. If you want to throw in observations about Myanmar from your extensive experience, feel free.
Thank you, Gwen, and thanks for the invite. I think I'll focus a bit more on Taiwan here. Taiwan had been a bit of a backwater for the international media for decades. Hong Kong has always been the center where correspondents would base and cover China and cover the region from the city. So the fact that Taiwan has evolved into a regional media hub is a very recent development, and I would say there are mostly two reasons for this. One is because of the deterioration of the press freedom in the whole region, as Cedric and his colleagues explained earlier today. therefore making Taiwan a shelter for a lot of correspondents. The other reason is Taiwan itself being at the front line of Chinese threats and Chinese military incursions and sort of caught in this big power rivalry is increasingly a massive story itself. So the Taiwan FCC, the TFCC as we say in Taiwan, it was founded in 1998. So I'm not the founding president. There are many presidents before me. But the level of, the number of correspondents who have descended in Taiwan in the last 2 years, it is astonishing. Just take this, the January's presidential election as an example. Official government number says that 519 foreign journalists were credited with Taiwan's MOFA, flew in or were based in Taipei to cover the presidential elections 4 months ago. The TFCC, we now had more than 200 members at the end of last year. And that's, as I said, that's not just because of Taiwan, it's because of what's happening in neighboring regions and territories. China has expelled, threatened, and refused visas for many foreign journalists. Many have moved to Taipei. Some are still waiting to go back to China as they work from Taiwan and seek to understand Taiwan's history and society. And also for Hong Kong, I mean, these 2 days we see some news reports coming out. First is that Chinese media, including the South China Morning Post, has stopped applying for the SOPA award out of fear and sensitivity. The second is the Wall Street Journal moving the whole Asia operations from Hong Kong to Singapore. So I think all these point to the fact that Taiwan is one of the few places that offers safety and access for a wide range of correspondence. Yeah, I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back to some of those issues. Then we might keep you till last, Natakon, as you've got an overview. But let's hear from Sumyat Wai, maybe a little bit about your new Independent Press Council, and also, I think, what you're doing as well with Tan Win Ket and as a woman journalist. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Gwen. Can you hear me?
I think you need to speak up a bit now, maybe.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Kuntam, can we have more volume for this mic?
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Okay.
It's
No,
okay.
carry on.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, thanks for inviting me. So, this event.
Maybe this might be better.
So, I represent as the Joint Secretary of Independent Press Council Myanmar. It is newly found. So we found in last December, so 2023. So it's for like over 4 months. So period of. So we are doing about the protection of journalist safety, especially Myanmar journalist safety. So because our journalists are suffering safety concern and also the torture and threats of military concern, not only military concern, but also some of the EAOs, ethnic groups. So that's why, so we are doing about that, and also very recently, so like some of the EAOs, so KNU and also IEC from Karenni, so they announced the media rules, so for reporting, but it's meant, so they went to press, so for the media, so actually it's related with the press freedom. So that's why. So we are doing about that, so to discuss with them for reporting freely in the ethnic area. So this is our objective, and also another objective is we are trying to protect the journalists, so from their safety concern. So that's why we are collaborating with the international organizations. So for the journalist protection. And also we are today, so we launched IPCN, not only IPCN, so but also the code of conduct, so that Myanmar media should follow. So in these days, so because of proof, so our news production quality so decline. So because we cannot try the information to be balanced, so. Because of the press of the authorities, so that's why. So we are carefully doing about that. So what we can adjust, so negotiate so among the media and also the news sources, so like that. So, and also, I'm also the editor in charge and also co-founder of Taiwan News. So we are based in Mesa. So we are reporting about Myanmar issue. Because as the exile, so we cannot do freely our reporting in the border area. So because we lost our identity as the professional journalist, so we cannot reveal. I'm reporter, I'm journalist. So because we are in the second country, so we have no strong document. And also, if we show the like an indicate of reporters or journalists, so we can arrest us because we cannot do officially media works in other countries. So that is a problem. So that's why we are very doing strictly in border areas, so to report about the Myanmar issues. So that is also what I work in currently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sumyat. Now, just if is our Cambodian panelist online, Kuntam? She might have joined by now. Pa Sokang. Kuntam, not yet. Cambodian, not yet. Okay, so she'll come in when she's in North America, so it's quite a big time difference. I'd just like to maybe turn to Kun Natakorn to give us your take on the, you do very close-up monitoring of trends, digital investigations, misinformation, fake news, etc. So perhaps your take on the overall trends and how you work might be of interest.
Thanks, Gwen. Thanks for inviting me, and hello, everyone. Despite the fall of the decline of media freedom in the region, the information landscape has never been more accessible. But the question is, like, what kind of information are people getting into? And I've been with AFP for 4 years in digital investigation or fact check. The proliferation of false information has the same effect against press freedom as a disappearance or as a closure of like a media organization, is that it leads to people making misinformed choices. And of course, in an age where information is never more easily accessible, accuracy remains the most integral part of AFP's new operation. And that includes maintaining a reporting team, even in countries which is increasingly difficult to report from. As for the trends, we're looking at the media landscape from a digital perspective, information ecosystem. There's many flashpoints which misinformation and disinformation can be proliferated and it can explode in the number. We've seen it in 2020 with like the global pandemic. We've seen it in situations where there's war or there's lack of actual information and context. And the resurgence of old claims, fake news, is what we're seeing this year too. And they're making cross from previously maybe more suspected or not credible sources. Now they're making their ways into like media organizations who are giving space to these more dangerous claims. For example, maybe like vaccine claims, conspiracy theories. More and more this year, I'm seeing that channels, companies are giving space to people who like just share these dubious sources and presenting them as factual information. And from that, we're heading into like a year where election is a big thing. If there's any election year, it's this year. It's the election year. There's so many countries having elections in this year. For AFP, election misinformation is a big part of our fact check team's job. And we share tips. We talk about the ways we can monitor, the ways we can tackle, investigate these claims. Some fact checks, it just takes a few minutes of finding the original image, while others, it can take up to months, to find these things. And with the uptick in election, there was also an uptick in election misinformation, particularly with the coordinated efforts of maybe a group of actors. We can say that their IO or intelligence operations were coordinated with state actors in the guise of trying to convey a rhetoric, trying to convey a message. For Thailand's election last year, the party that was targeted by the most misinformation claims actually won the election, which is in contrast to maybe the Philippines election, which is completely opposite. So this year we're still holding our grounds with the staff we have in our countries in Asia Pacific, in India, in Pakistan, Indonesia. We're just trying to hold the fort from maybe these claims that are trying to use regional trends, particularly disinformation and hate speech for Rohingya. We're seeing in India. It continues to be a prevalent source of misinformation in Myanmar and also in Indonesia. And that brings me to the difficulties of working, the challenges that our colleagues face. In regards to the change of press freedom, particularly on Hong Kong, it remains a regional headquarters for AFP, and we intend to stay for the long term. Therefore, vigilance is very important because China has been increasingly encroached on the freedoms on the island. And of course, from Myanmar, AFP has kept a low profile in Myanmar. We have Burmese editors helping from outside, and we have some staff situated in Yangon and maybe stringers in some other areas. We still believe that the verification of first-hand sources and reporting from the ground remains a crucial part of our role, and it's important to report from there what's happening in Myanmar, or else it might just turn into a bubble where information cannot really be verified from the outside. And we've also been involved in the training. Fact-check training is like hand in hand with media literacy skills. I've been in trainings for the past 4 years. I've been in AFP, trained over 200 journalists and communication staff, and hopefully it will have an impact in the long run for like the information ecosystem headed forward.
Well, thank you. And also, I think because this room is full of people who are very much focused on Thailand, I wonder if specifically you could talk about, we just heard Thailand did considerably better in the World Press Freedom Index in the last year than previous years, jumping quite a lot of places. How does that fit with what you're doing, and where does Thailand fit into your regional perspective?
Well, I would say for the year, it's been relatively more peaceful than the previous 2 years, but context is really important.
That's coming off quite a low base. Like
Cedric said, there hasn't been like violence against journalists this year compared to previous years with like the protests. We haven't seen them yet. And I would like to knock on wood on that too, because generally one of the reasons, from my understanding, that Thailand bumped up is like relatively other countries kind of fell back. So it's not to credit like the country itself. I'm glad that the country's doing better, but I wouldn't say it's just because of the changes per se this year.
Thank you. And just turning back to you, Sumyat, there was a perception because of the extreme violence in Myanmar, like whole villages being bombed and like people being tortured and all kinds of things. I think there is a perception that media must be on the front line. Actually, officially, there's not. You would think that there'd be even more journalists killed or locked up, or we've had some awful things, journalists tortured to death. But the actual recorded rate is relatively low. But do you think there's other forms of? Obviously, the worst is that they've all been closed down and anyone independent is in hiding. But what kind of forms of repression and harassment are there of media in both inside Myanmar, but also for organisations like yours? You're all running reporters inside Myanmar that have to keep, they probably live in fear of their lives, but What's the level of, targeting of media these days in Myanmar?
This is a
You want to use a better
This is a big challenge situation for Myanmar journalists nowadays. So, as all of you know, so it has been so over 3 years so until military coup. So and at the first day of coup, so the military they targeted the journalists to arrest, and also so that's why till today so we have 62 journalists in the jail, so and also 5 journalists are well caged. So because they report about the accurate information. Very recently, so the woman filmmaker, so she's also the journalist of some of the media, so Shin Dewi, she also has sentenced for a life. So that means the journalist like a complex criminal case, and also the military council, so they sued the journalists with the like an anti-terrorism law. So journalism is not crime, but so we are like so admit you confess a criminal case or like that. So they trust the military trust the journalists. So that's why so we cannot steal so in a local area. So even the citizen journalists they have to work secretly. So and also very recently, so our media journalists, so the journalists from Thailand News, so they went to Miaori Township, so for reporting. So at that time, so not only the military, so we have to kill the EAO, so because in current state, so there are a lot of ethnic crews, so like a KNU, BGF, and TKBA. So we don't know so which which soldiers from which organizations. So sometimes, so BGF, so they well, so like a military soldier, so that's why. So we have to care a lot. So we cannot tell as the journalists, and also we cannot take the cover from even from ethnic groups. So that's a situation in Myanmar. So and also I missed in the some of the issues like that. So one young woman journalist, so she also had sentenced over 13 years. So because she reports about the, so she arrested while she is reporting about peacefully protesting. So at that time, the military council, I think you will note that issue, the military council hit with the car and arrested her. So now, so because of that effort, so she's not well stay now. So that's a disabled in the jail. So there is the target of the journalists, and also that means that we said about that the press freedom is very well saturation in Myanmar. On the other hand, the military side, so they do a lot of fake news. They distribute a lot of fake news from their Telegram channel, and also from the local media, some of local media, so with like they support. And also some of local media who are in country, so they cannot report about the political issues. So they have reports like economics or health or like that. So some of media, so from their side, military side, so they report about sometimes what the military council does. For example, so the military council give the favor for amnesty like that. So that's why we have to do so very hard so to tell the accurate information, and also we cannot, so at that jail, so according to the journalists who flee from the jail, so they said, so the military council, so they asked the journalists, why they asked the questions that about the news sources. So that's why the news sources, they cannot tell the information so to the journalists. So because of the target of the military. So is this the situation? So very well situation in Myanmar like that.
Right. Thank you very much for that. If anyone has questions, the floor is open. And if any of you would like to add comments on what perhaps Sumyat said or what Thompson said about Taiwan, please feel free. Were you?
Well, I'd just like to add a point that beyond the journalists who are jailed and beaten up, I think we have to consider the financial pressure that they face when press freedom is constrained in this manner. Essentially, when they cannot operate in the open, they cannot earn an income from their journalism as easily as before. And I'm in contact with many journalists in Myanmar who are struggling not just to report, but just to support themselves and their families. So that's something to consider. I mean, just because we have fewer journalists jailed or killed or beaten up, it doesn't mean that the situation is any better for journalists still trying to be journalists.
Right.
So let me add some of the information about it. So yes, for Myanmar media, so we are struggling with the funding issue. So because of the less donors, so year by year, so as the co-founder of the news media, so we cannot support the enough salary for journalists. So because of the funding decrease. So that's why some of the journalists, so they change their career, you know. Some of the ethnic women journalists, so they move to Bangkok and they do in beauty parlor, spa, like this. So that is also the big issue for our future and also our press freedom. So if there is no journalist, so we cannot report the accuracy information. So that's what's happened among the Myanmar media.
Thank you. I'd actually like to bring up an issue I thought was interesting. I heard from various Thai media, actually, including some very senior ones in a discussion yesterday exactly about some of these issues. Some of them felt that one of the big factors in the rise of a lot of issues like maybe disinformation or fake news is this economic issue of more and more, particularly in Thailand, we've seen the shrinkage of a lot of mainstream media organizations. There's clearly too many to support the scene, and people were saying this is a problem because they're essentially cannibalizing each other, but also that it creates a lot of competition to get a better story or add a little bit extra, and therefore they were also saying it's becoming a problem about if not necessarily straight fake news, but a lot of pursuit of sensationalism to get more people to your site. But from what you said, the situation's improved in Thailand in the last year. I mean, how do you square those two factors and the economic imperative that is clearly kind of destabilizing the Thai media in terms of, also we've seen the closure of well, I guess that was maybe for other reasons, People's Voice and other things.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Gwen. Hopefully I don't take you guys back too much, but the past 10 years, Thailand has moved for the news, for the TV news, they've moved from like a terrestrial kind of signal of broadcast to the digital format one, which will support many more channels. So there's been an explosion of the number of media outlets, while the number of actual reporters have pretty much remained the same. So a lot of the younger individuals, the junior ones, have been forced to take like a more leading role. But the thing that they probably did not comprehend is that the audience themselves, they moved to a different behavioral base too. No longer did they have to wait for the time for the news to come on TV. They can just go for their favorite news program and watch it at their own convenience, you know, and there's no turning back from this kind of behavioral change. So, you know, in the end, the media that they perceived as like a secondary format online became the primary source of how information was consumed. So that's changed forever, and they're still adapting. Even now, you know, they're still, like you said, cannibalizing. When one place shuts down, they have to find another place. It's a difficult situation for sure. And these disinformation campaigns seem to be, well, I shouldn't say this on live stream, but potentially seems to be funded somewhat just to bring them on TV and proliferate this kind of information on a different platform.
Right. Thank you. So if anyone would like to ask a question, I can see someone heading to the microphone. Please identify yourself. Well, if she's coming online. I mean, she's supposed to come online.
Hello. I might be too tall.
Yeah, sorry about that. Kuntam, is it possible to make the microphone a bit higher? Oh,
There we
that's
go.
better, yeah.
My name's Danny. I'm a recent graduate and I'm a member here at the club. My question, and I'm sorry to bring up a question from outside of the region, but my question is about Julian Assange. His case will come up in a couple of weeks, and he's facing extradition to the United States and potential life imprisonment if he's extradited. So my question, perhaps it would be better posed to the previous presenters who had the picture of Julian. But my question is, do you think that this case has any implications for Southeast Asia? So more widely, more globally.
You want to take this one? Well, we'll turn first to Cedric, and if any of the panel has a thought.
I was about to say that actually, in my sense, it would be better that some actual journalists give us their opinion on it before I speak.
Well, but it sounds to us like you've been tracking the case quite closely.
Okay. Well, I would just say I do not think it will have a special repercussion in Asia. It will be the same in the world. We have a major problem, a global problem, which is authoritarian regimes are stronger and stronger. But somehow that's what you can expect from an authoritarian regime. And the reason is that democracies somehow do not stand for their principles, do not keep up to what the public could expect from democracies. And the case of Julian Assange is the perfect example that some countries, and actually it's sometimes difficult for us as an international NGO, even though we do not, of course, work for governments, but we always hear, well, you're criticizing China, you're criticizing Vietnam, you're criticizing some countries, but actually the Western countries do the same. And we somehow giving a good argument to the people to say that. And democracies have to stand for their principles, and they should not engage in this kind of extremely dangerous game. And this is extremely dangerous because if they do not respect their own principles, it's impossible for the public to believe them when they are going to denounce press freedom violations on other continents.
Right. Thank you. Well put. Does any of the panel have any thoughts on the Assange case? No, it doesn't really play large in Thailand, I must say.
Just a very quick comment. I don't think it would play large in Southeast Asia because the journalists are struggling with their own legal regimes. As we have seen in this region, the government, I think I've said this before, the governments learn from each other and they're crafting broader and broader laws that penalize online expression if it is deemed somehow to be anti-government or deemed somehow to be critical against the government. So these very broad laws make the online environment threatening for journalists operating in the region. And journalists are struggling with that. And that's why I don't think the Assange case would have much of an impact here because...
Right,
yeah.
It's not a cautionary tale
No,
for
it's
anyone
not.
in particular,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and I don't think Assange is seen as a role model for anybody, really. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, moving right along now. I think I'd just like to bring something up, unless anyone else has a question. You're right to touch on the weaponization of laws, which has been the big trend in the last few years, particularly. I mean, we've seen laws passed in Malaysia and a bunch of Southeast Asian countries, sort of related to digital or electronic crimes, etc., which is clearly aimed at, it does weaponize the law directly aimed at media and freedom of information. But I think one more insidious thing, and I'd be interested if any of you have a thought on that, is self-censorship, which we obviously deal a lot with in Thailand, and even the foreign correspondents here, if you want to stay in Thailand, you kind of observe certain red lines about things you can and cannot say about Thailand, and there's a certain law, as we all know, or legal regime that can land you in jail for writing anything that's deemed insulting to the monarchy. So how do you deal with that kind of censorship, which is self-censorship? You don't actually have to, you don't have to beat journalists up and throw them in jail. They're censoring themselves because if they don't, they do end up in jail. And we've seen almost no journalists jailed for 112 in recent times. So I don't know,
I think there's
Natakorn is the only Thai on the panel. Maybe you would like to say.
I'll just start on this one then. I don't think we have any journalists who have been penalized with 112. We've seen activists being penalized, particularly with the 2020 student protests, particularly the motorcade incident.
Well, and the journalists this year, we just had a recent case which was quite remarkable, that they were reporting about activists defacing a monument. I mean, that somehow related, I think, to 112.
Yes. Well, it hasn't been like this. It's a big change in 2020. We've been treading like places we've never been to before with this draconian law, for sure. Sometimes we have to take risks, but at the same time, we have to report it with impartiality and being fair. We cannot get any comments from some sides on this matter. And that might make just reporting the issue alone insufficient per se. But it's definitely a difficult topic, and even Thai media themselves have been seen to be more competitive on the edge even with international media. When at the time it was happening, it was all unfolding.
Well, I think in that respect, foreign media can be quite useful for the Thais, because they tend to go further, and then the Thai media can follow in their wake or report that foreign media organized, like, for example, BBC, which is why they get hit all the time.
That's true. That's true. It's something that's still ongoing. The process hasn't stopped yet, but the transformation has begun, but being more spoken in public places.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. So on that note, I think probably if there are any more questions or comments,
Gwen, can I add a quick point?
Yes, you certainly can.
Taiwan's a lot freer, but I just
Could
want
you
to
speak more directly into
Sure. I'm just keen to share a bit of observation from Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan these days, so many correspondents have moved to Taiwan, including myself, from Myanmar, instead of from China and Hong Kong like most of the other correspondents. But Taiwan's legal framework still needs a lot of improving. I mean, as recently as a few years ago, one of the opposition papers or pro-opposition newspapers threatened to sue or attempted to sue the Financial Times correspondent due to her reporting. The One-to-One China Times Group, one of the most influential conglomerates in Taiwan. I think fake news is another thing. Just now, panelists spoke about fake news. In Taiwan, we see fake news, particularly Chinese language disinformation, every day. So in that sense, the government tries to work with the local and foreign media to share what they have investigated and to cooperate with NGOs that seeks to counter fake news on a regular basis. I think the one quick last point is that despite so many correspondents moving to Taiwan, there is still a lot of pressure and internal self-censorship I think some of us familiar in the region would know last year the Chinese embassy in Britain issued a formal letter to the editor, to the Financial Times, simply because of the way the FT calls Taiwan and the Taiwan government. So given so many correspondents remain China correspondents working in exile in Taiwan, there is a genuine worry how China seeks to track what they write, how they describe Taiwan, and how they try to weaponize the whole visa access.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a very good point. So I think we do have our Cambodian participant online now. Right, we're just trying to hook her up. She is there and waiting. Kuntam, she says she's been online for half an hour. So, right.
So good morning from here.
Oh, good.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, Pastor Kang. So you're having trouble with your screen, so don't worry, we can hear the audio. If you could speak loudly and clearly. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
And if it's okay, I might just give a little bit of background. Pastor Kang was with VOD, which was one of the biggest and latest casualties of the Cambodian government's crackdown on independent media, and wrote some stories, particularly one that triggered a huge backlash, both from the government and a lot of trolls, and left in fear of her life in the country, and is now overseas and is joining us tonight. So thank you very much for joining us, and perhaps you'd like to update us and your view of the situation in Cambodia and your own experience, very briefly.
Yeah, thank you. So, good morning again, and thanks for having me today. Before speaking something related to the situation in Cambodia right now, I may just have short summary about what happened to VOD News.
Yes, very briefly, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm Sok Heng. I'm a news reporter for the Voice of Democracy VOD, an independent news agency in the past over 10 years, first run by Cambodian Center for Independent Media, CCIM, but now has changed after government taking down VOD. I have been working for VOD since August 2021. My work with VOD including reporting on issues related to social and political rights in Cambodia. This is also include reports on intimidation and harassment against union leaders and activists. Particularly from the labor rights supported Union of Khmer Employees of Nagavel, or we call in short LRSU. And also most of the reports focus on social issues, politics, and the human rights situation in Cambodia. My most recent article released on 9 February 2023, titled Government Official Says It Is Not Wrong for Hun Manet to Play His Father's Role in Providing Aid to Turkey, which is based on the confirmation by the head of government spokesperson unit, Mr. Paisipan. 3 days after the article was released, Prime Minister Hun Sen ordered VOD 24 hours to issue a public apology to eliminate confusion, as VOD will face a shutdown. Posted on his official Facebook page, the Prime Minister instructed government spokesperson to look into the possibility of taking legal action against VOD. So on 12 February 2023, former organization which lead VOD, CCM management was invited to meet with a representative from Ministry of Information. After the meeting, VOD Khmer published a follow-up article. To note Hun Manet denied signing the document, and CCM also sent a letter to Prime Minister Hun Sen through his cabinet, expressing regret about the confusion caused by the article and requesting his tolerance, which denied by him, saying that the words regret and tolerance are interchangeable with apologize, and he cannot accept it. In subsequent, CCM sent another letter of apology to the Prime Minister at 12:45 a.m., the early morning of 13 February. So 1 hour after the letter of apology was posted, Prime Minister Hun Sen denied it again, said it was too late, and ordered the Ministry of Information to revoke VOD license and finish all broadcasting by 10 a.m. on February 13, 2023, with his writing in Khmer on Facebook. So according to the mentioned development, that is a very concern about my personal safety. Like I had been facing concerning and stressful environment, like due to Facebook personality who is known as the ruling party activist and also an online journalist that frequently write and post to insult the opposition politicians, independent media, as well as civil society organizations. So regarding my case, he used misogynistic language and sexually harassed me via his Facebook page. I was thinking that should I say the sentence or the phrase or the paragraph, what he said. It was like always shock for me to read his sentence, but I should read here. I think in case you are wondering, like, okay, what kind of sentence he used to harass me online. So he said, he posts on Facebook page with my photo, with my full name, and he said, as a young and pretty girl, but with a wild character, dare to spread malicious news against His Excellency Dr. Hun Manet without any base or evidence. With such a cheap character, whoever marries you would be finished. If possible, you should stop. Don't you dare to betray your own country and fabricate information against innocent people in exchange for a foreign salary. If I say that I just had sex with you 3 to 4 times and accompany you once to have an abortion, how would you feel? So with this insulting post, hundreds of comments were made in succession to put more and more pressure on me and VOD. On 14 February, just a day later after VOD was taken down the license, 40 members of civil society organizations has issued a joint statement calling the government to take legal actions against Taiwan. The one that just used the insulting post to me, something like that. However, there is no proper response from the government. Instead, the Prime Minister Hun Sen has posted on his Facebook page with message imply his endorsement to Taiwan unacceptable behavior targeting me. So I got no doubt that why I got the harassment and like the hundreds of comments were made to put more pressure on me, because like they are trying to show that they support like their government. So whatever their government or whatever those Cambodian people or ruling party activists say, they will always just follow to add pressure. They don't mind or don't care about, like, okay, if you are a female journalist, you should be supported. There are just a few female journalists or few independent journalists who are female who are working in Cambodia, and we always wish that there should be supported, something like that. But instead, yeah, there is no.
Well, thanks, Pa Sokeng. Maybe finally, if you just want to, you're obviously in touch with some of your former colleagues in Cambodia, and there's still quite a few brave journalists carrying on, even though their organizations have been kind of decimated or closed down. I mean, what's your sense of the mood amongst the journalists that are truly independent and trying to carry on and are still in the country?
I apologize in case I cannot get your question. But do you mean that have I contact to like few of independent media journalists who are in Cambodia? Like, how is their life, right?
Yes, it's your sense of where it's at now. I mean, you were part of a big group around VOD and some of the other publications that were closed down, and you still have your former colleagues there. Do you get the sense that they've been broken up and they're finished, or that there's determination to carry on, or what's your sense?
I see. Thank you. So in the country right now, like I still have the communication with some of former colleagues from VOD and other colleagues who are in other very few independent media organization. So for some of former colleagues in VOD, they are still working in the former organization named CCIM, which led VOD agency before. So half of them, or maybe a little bit over half of them, still in CCIM, and nearly half of them are working for government, because at that time, after a crackdown, after taking down VOD license, government has called them who lose their job to get a job in government.
Right.
You know, like when they say, okay, VOD are not professionalism, something like that. They try to government try to say that, but then they ask our colleague who lose their job to get job in government.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so okay. that also showing is a solid proof that they just want to break independent media rather than allow it to live.
Yeah, I see.
And other independent media journalists who I know, just very few of them, they said they are working with a censorship, like a kind of worrying most of the time. Okay, some people even told me that when they work on those sensitive issues, they just worried that, okay, what if tomorrow they were caught, they were like kind of in a very hard time, like what I used to face, or what if tomorrow they were in prison, something like that. So they just worry a lot. So what the content they write, they always kind of very careful. Those they are under the professionalism, but it's still very much a lot. Yeah.
Thanks very much for that, and for joining us tonight, and we wish you luck, and hope you can keep rallying your colleagues in Cambodia. I think the government's getting a bit of a free ride right now. Anyway, on that note, I would like, if there are no other questions, maybe to thank everyone for coming. For those interested also in Myanmar and also the growing grip of China on the region. We have an excellent book talk coming up on May the 15th with Enze Han, the author of an excellent new book on the nature of Chinese power and influence on Southeast Asia. It's a very interesting thesis, and we have a very good panel, including Jason Tower of USIP and Ajahn Tungunran of Chula University. So don't miss that. That'll be a talk on May the 15th. There's other things in the pipeline, so keep an eye on our website. And thank you very much. The bar will stay open, so stick around if you would like. And thank you very much to our panelists and to RSF for coming over and launching a report. So thank you very much to all. Thanks. Let's have a